The massive observation ship hung silently in space, hidden behind Earth's moon. Its cloaking systems made it invisible to the primitive radar systems the humans used. Inside the ship's main observation deck, first speaker Marcus watched the blue planet with his 4 eyes, each one focused on different continents. Another war has broken out in the eastern region, his assistant Tom reported, his gray skin shifting colors slightly to show his disapproval. They're using those primitive nuclear weapons again. 3rd time this decade. Marcus moved closer to the view screen, watching the patterns of light across Earth's surface. These humans were strange creatures. They had mastered basic atomic power, had sent primitive robots to their neighboring planets, and had even started building a small space station. But they still fought among themselves over land, resources, and beliefs. "Show me their latest technology reports," Marcus ordered. The screens around him lit up with images of Earth's newest inventions: electric cars, early quantum computers, and experimental fusion reactors. All of it was painfully basic to his advanced eyes. "They're still burning fossil fuels," Tom noted with something close to disgust. "And their space vehicles can barely reach their own moon without breaking apart." Marcus nodded, but something about the humans bothered him. In just 300 years, they had gone from horse-drawn carriages to spaceflight. It was an incredibly fast advancement, faster than any species the Council had ever observed. But their progress was chaotic, uncontrolled, and dangerous. "What about their military capabilities?" Marcus asked, bringing up more screens. He watched their fighter jets, tanks, and naval vessels with mild interest. The weapons were crude but showed surprising innovation. These humans had a strange talent for finding new ways to fight wars. The ship's AI spoke up, its voice calm and measured. "Warning. Detected unauthorized nuclear launch from northern continent." All 4 of Marcus's eyes turned to watch as the missile arced high into the atmosphere. Within minutes, the defense systems of another nation shot it down, creating a spectacular light show in the upper atmosphere. "That's the 3rd incident this month," Tom said, his skin now turning a worried shade of blue. "They're going to destroy themselves before they ever reach the stars." Marcus wasn't so sure. He had been watching Earth for 5 years now, and something about these humans didn't quite fit the usual patterns. Yes, they were primitive and violent, but they were also incredibly resilient. Every time they came close to destroying themselves, they somehow pulled back from the edge. He began writing his final report to the Galactic Council. Earth Species Assessment. Classification Level 2 Pre-Contact Species. The dominant species, humans, show rapid but unstable technological development. Their propensity for violence and internal conflict makes them unsuitable for diplomatic relations at this time. Recommendation: continue observation from safe distance. No contact until they achieve unified planetary government and abandon nuclear weapons. Just as Marcus was finishing his report, the ship's sensors detected something unusual. A small human satellite was passing unusually close to their position. The cloaking technology made them invisible, but Marcus held his breath anyway. The satellite's primitive sensors swept past them, detecting nothing. "They're getting better at space surveillance," Tom observed. "That satellite has quantum scanning capabilities. Very crude, but still impressive for their level of technology." Marcus added a final note to his report. "Warning. Species shows unusual adaptation rate and technological innovation despite their primitive state. Recommend careful monitoring of their development." As the observation ship prepared to leave Earth's solar system, Marcus took one final look at the blue planet. Something in his gut told him he was missing something important about these humans. They were primitive, yes, but there was a spark of something else there. The way they bounced back from disasters. Their speed of innovation. Their stubborn refusal to give up even in the face of certain defeat. It was all very unusual. "Begin jump sequence," he ordered, pushing his doubts aside. The ship's engines hummed to life, preparing to tear a hole in space-time. Mark Earth as potential future contact in approximately 200 years, assuming they survive their own violence. The ship disappeared in a flash of light, leaving Earth behind. Marcus's report was filed away in the Council's archives, labeled as just another routine assessment of a primitive species. None of them could have known that in less than 1 year, this seemingly unimportant planet would become the key to the greatest war the galaxy had ever seen. The great halls of the Unified Systems Alliance headquarters shook as another explosion rocked the building. Admiral James stood at the massive window, watching as golden warships of the Dominion Empire filled the purple sky of Capital World. Their energy weapons cut through the city's shields like paper, leaving trails of destruction in their wake. "Status report," he demanded, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "Sir, we've lost contact with the outer colonies," his second-in-command Robert replied, wiping blood from a cut on his forehead. "The Dominion's quantum disruption fields are cutting off all communication. Our fleet in the Centauri sector is completely blind." The war had started 3 days ago without warning. The Dominion Empire, after centuries of peace, had launched a massive attack across 50 star systems simultaneously. Their new weapons were unlike anything the Alliance had ever seen. They didn't just destroy ships, they erased them from existence, leaving not even debris behind. Another blast rattled the building's foundation. Through the window, James watched as one of their largest battleships split in half, its reactor core going dark. The Dominion's gravity weapons were tearing apart everything in their path, and the Alliance's best shields were useless against them. "What about the emergency evacuation?" James asked, turning away from the window. The command center was filled with smoke and sparks from damaged equipment. Officers ran between stations, trying to coordinate what remained of their forces. 70% of civilian ships have made it to safety, Robert reported. "But we're losing ground in every sector. The Dominion's pushing straight through our strongest defense lines like they're not even there." James studied the holographic map floating in the center of the room. Red dots representing Dominion forces were spreading like a virus across Alliance space. Their tactics were perfect, their timing flawless. It was as if they had been planning this attack for decades. "Sir," a young officer called out, her voice shaking, "we're detecting massive fleet movements near the primitive sectors. The Dominion is pushing towards the uncontacted worlds." James frowned. The primitive sectors were supposed to be protected, left alone to develop naturally. They were watching dozens of young civilizations there, waiting for them to reach the right level of technology before making contact. But now the Dominion was moving in, probably looking for resources and slave labor. "They won't stand a chance," Robert said quietly. "Those worlds barely have spaceflight. Some of them still think they're alone in the universe." A holographic map zoomed in on one particular sector. James recognized it immediately. It was where that blue planet was, the one with the violent but fascinating species called humans. First Speaker Marcus had filed a report about them just months ago, marking them as too primitive for contact. "The Dominion will reach Earth's sector in less than a month," the young officer reported. "Should we send warning beacons?" James shook his head. "We can't break the non-contact protocols, not even in war." But as he said it, he felt a twinge of guilt. They were effectively abandoning these worlds to their fate. Suddenly, the entire building rocked with the biggest explosion yet. Alarms blared as emergency force fields snapped into place around the command center. Direct hit to the main reactor. Someone shouted, "We need to evacuate now." James looked one last time at the map, at all those innocent worlds about to be caught in a war they didn't even know existed. Then he gave the order he had hoped never to give. "Send the emergency signal to all Alliance forces," he commanded. "Fall back to the secondary defense line. We've lost Capital World." As they rushed to the evacuation ships, James couldn't shake the image of that little blue planet from his mind. Earth was so far away, so primitive, so unprepared for what was coming. The humans there were still fighting their own little wars, unaware that a storm of unimaginable proportions was heading their way. "May whatever gods they believe in help them," he muttered as his ship broke atmosphere, leaving the burning capital world behind. They're going to need it. But deep in his gut, James had a strange feeling. He remembered reading something in Marcus's report about the humans' unusual ability to adapt, their strange talent for warfare despite their primitive technology. Maybe, just maybe, they weren't as helpless as everyone thought. The Alliance warship Starlight drifted through space, its engines barely functioning. Captain Jane watched through the cracked bridge window as her ship's emergency repair drones worked frantically to seal the worst of the hull breaches. They had barely escaped the last battle alive, and now they were lost in an unfamiliar sector. "Damage report," she called out, trying to keep her voice steady for her crew's sake. The bridge lighting flickered, casting strange shadows across the worried faces of her surviving officers. "It's bad, Captain," the ship's engineer said, looking up from his damaged console. "Main drive is at 12% power. Life support is failing. We've lost most of our weapons, and our jump drive is leaking radiation." He paused, then added quietly, "We won't survive another attack." The ship's AI spoke next, its usually smooth voice now distorted by damage. "Warning. Dominion pursuit fleet detected. Estimated arrival time, 47 minutes. Jane slammed her fist against her chair's armrest. They had fought well, destroying 3 Dominion ships before being forced to retreat. But their small scout vessel was never meant for direct combat. They were supposed to be mapping safe evacuation routes for civilian ships, not fighting battles. "Show me our location," she ordered. The main screen flickered to life, displaying a star map. Jane's eyes widened as she recognized where they were. "This is the primitive sector. We're near that level 2 world. Earth." The tactical officer spoke up, his uniform stained with blood from a head wound. "Captain, we're picking up their transmissions. Their technology is primitive, but—" He hesitated. "Their military communications show they're more organized than our old reports suggested." Jane stood up, moving closer to the screen. Earth wasn't supposed to be contacted for another 2 centuries. The rules about this were absolute. But as she watched the Dominion fleet getting closer on their sensors, she realized they might not have a choice. "Ship's AI, give me a battle analysis," she commanded. "If we face the Dominion fleet in our current condition, what are our chances?" The AI's response was immediate. "Calculating. Probability of survival, 0.03%. Probability of defeating pursuit fleet, 0.001%. The AI paused, then added, "However, if we could secure local assistance and repairs, survival probability increases to 47.3%. "Local assistance?" the engineer asked. "You mean the humans, but they're primitive. They don't even have proper space weapons." Jane walked to the front of the bridge, watching the blue planet grow larger in their view. She could see the lights of their cities, the movements of their satellites, and the energy signatures of their nuclear weapons. Primitive, yes, but there was something else there, something that the reports hadn't captured. "Look at their military bases," she said, pointing to the tactical display. "See how they're positioned. These people know warfare. They've been fighting each other for their entire history. And look at their weapon tests. They're innovative, unpredictable." The tactical officer nodded slowly. "Their missiles are crude, but their targeting systems are surprisingly advanced, and they've developed some interesting countermeasures against their own weapons." The ship shuddered as another system failed. Warning lights flashed across every console. They were running out of time. "Captain," the AI interrupted, "Dominion fleet has increased speed. New arrival time, 31 minutes. We must make a decision now." Jane took a deep breath. She was about to break the most important rule in the Alliance handbook. Contacting a primitive world could destroy their natural development, change their society forever. But if the Dominion found them first, "Open a channel," she ordered. "Find their highest military authority, and get me their language database." She turned to her crew, seeing the shock on their faces. "I know what the rules say, But right now, we have a choice between breaking the rules or letting the Dominion enslave every human on that planet. As her communications officer worked to establish contact, Jane watched Earth's night side rotate into view. In just a few minutes, she would either save her crew and possibly give humanity a fighting chance, or she would go down in history as the captain who corrupted a primitive world. The comm system crackled to life. "Channel ready, Captain. They're receiving our signal." Jane straightened her torn uniform. "This is Captain Jane of the Alliance-worshipped Starlight to Earth Military Command. We need your help, and we have a warning. You are not alone in the universe, and a war is coming to your world." The United Nations emergency bunker was filled with the leaders of Earth's most powerful nations. On the massive screen before them, Captain Jane's damaged face looked down at them, her alien uniform torn and stained. Behind her, strange lights flashed on what was clearly the bridge of a spaceship. "Let me be clear," she said, her words automatically translated by her ship's eye. "The Dominion fleet will reach Earth in less than 30 minutes. They've already conquered 50 star systems. They show no mercy to primitive worlds." The room erupted in chaos. Military generals argued with politicians, scientists frantically analyzed the alien ship's readings, and security teams rushed to raise the planet's alert level. General Thomas Reed stood quietly in the corner, studying the tactical data the Alliance ship had sent. While others panicked about aliens being real, he focused on the enemy's battle patterns. "Their weapons are advanced," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "But their tactics are predictable. They rely too heavily on their technology." The room fell silent as he walked to the front. "Look here," he pointed to the battle footage. "They attack in straight formations. They don't adapt. They don't improvise. They've forgotten the art of real warfare because their weapons are so powerful." Captain Jane's image shifted on the screen. "With respect, General, their weapons are beyond anything you've ever seen. They can tear apart our strongest ships." Thomas smiled. "Maybe. But we humans have been fighting against superior weapons for our entire history. We learned long ago that it's not always about having the best technology." He turned to the room. "How many times in our history have armies with primitive weapons defeated superior forces?" The Chinese military commander stood up. "The Viet Cong used tunnels and guerrilla tactics against modern armies. The Afghans resisted empires with just rifles and knowledge of the terrain." "Exactly," Thomas said. "Captain, you said your ship needs repairs. We can help. We might not have your advanced technology, but we have something better: centuries of experience in asymmetric warfare." The President of the United States stepped forward. "What are you suggesting, General?" "I'm suggesting we do what humans do best: adapt and overcome." Thomas pulled up Earth's military inventory on the screen. "We have thousands of nuclear weapons that we've been afraid to use. We have armies trained in guerrilla warfare. We have weapons and tactics that these Dominion forces have never seen because they're too primitive to be worth noticing." The room was quiet for a moment. Then the Russian leader spoke up. "For first time in history, all Earth faces same enemy. No more old fights. Today we work together." Captain Jane's image flickered. "The Dominion fleet is 20 minutes out. Even if you help us repair our ship, we can't fight them alone." "You won't be alone," Thomas said. He turned to the world leaders. "I need immediate authorization to implement what I'm calling the Primitive Response Protocol. We'll give these advanced aliens a lesson in old-school warfare." The votes came in quickly. For the first time in human history, every nation agreed. Nuclear silos were opened, but not for their intended targets. Special forces teams were mobilized. Aircraft carriers changed course, and in secret bases around the world, experimental weapons were pulled out of storage. "Captain," Thomas said, looking up at the screen, "bring your ship down to these coordinates. We'll have repair crews ready. And while they work, I want every piece of information you have about the Dominion's weapons and shields." The Russian leader grinned. "They think we primitive. Let them think this. When my grandfather fought in Stalingrad, He had only simple rifle against German tanks, but he had something they didn't expect: courage and creativity. As the world's military forces mobilized with unprecedented speed and unity, Thomas watched the alien ship descend through Earth's atmosphere. The Dominion was coming, expecting to find a primitive world easy to conquer. Instead, they were about to face an enemy that had spent its entire history learning how to defeat superior forces. "Send word to all commands," he ordered. "Operation David and Goliath is now active. Let's show these advanced aliens why humanity has survived every threat we've ever faced." Deep inside a converted nuclear bunker, Dr. Anna Roberts stared at the holographic display showing the Dominion's shield technology. Around her, teams of Earth's best scientists worked alongside Alliance engineers, their combined knowledge creating something entirely new. "The problem isn't that their shields are too strong," she said, reaching out to touch the hologram. "It's that we've been thinking about them wrong." She turned to Captain Jane, who was watching with interest. "Your weapons try to overpower their shields with pure energy, but sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." She pulled up footage of an old Earth War demonstration. "See this? It's called a kinetic bombardment weapon. Just a simple tungsten rod dropped from orbit. No explosives, no energy weapons. Pure physics. Mass times velocity equals impact force." The Alliance engineer finished, his eyes widening. "But our sensors show their shields can withstand much more force than that." Anna smiled. "Yes, because you're hitting them head-on. But what if we combined your quantum field technology with our primitive kinetic weapons?" She brought up a new diagram. "Your fields can create tiny gaps in shields, right? Now imagine a hypersonic tungsten rod passing through that gap, carrying a payload of our primitive nuclear material." The bunker buzzed with activity as the idea spread. On one side, nuclear scientists modified warheads to fit inside kinetic projectiles. On another, Alliance technicians adjusted their field generators to work with Earth's power systems. "They've never defended against this because they think it's beneath them," Anna explained to a group of military observers. "Their shields are designed to stop energy weapons and matter-antimatter explosions. But a simple metal rod moving at hypersonic speeds, combined with a nuclear payload that activates after penetration, they won't expect it." In another section of the bunker, engineers were modifying Earth's fighter jets with Alliance technology. The aliens had been shocked to learn that human pilots still flew their aircraft manually. They had switched to AI pilots centuries ago. "Human reflexes are slower than computer controls," an Alliance technician argued as they worked on an F-35. The human test pilot, Mark, laughed. "Maybe. But can your computers improvise like this?" He showed them footage of airshow performances, of fighters pulling maneuvers that seemed to defy physics. Sometimes being unpredictable is better than being perfect. They worked through the night, combining Earth's primitive but innovative technology with Alliance advanced science. Nuclear submarines were fitted with quantum sensors. Stealth bombers received shield generators. Old railway guns were modified to launch new hybrid weapons. Anna walked through the facility, checking on each team's progress. In one room, they were testing the new hybrid weapons on sample shield materials. The results were beyond anything they'd hoped for. The kinetic penetrators passed through the quantum gaps like they weren't even there, and the nuclear payloads detonated inside the shield bubble. Dr. Roberts, a young scientist, called out, "Look at this." He showed her test results from another project. They had found a way to use the Alliance's gravity weapons with Earth's missile guidance systems. The combination created weapons that could change direction faster than any AI could predict. "Their targeting systems are too logical," the scientist explained. "They expect enemies to take the most efficient path, but these missiles will follow random patterns while maintaining full acceleration. No computer would ever think to do that because it's inefficient." Captain Jane watched all this with growing amazement. The humans were taking Alliance technology in directions no one had ever considered. They weren't bound by centuries of established doctrine about how space warfare should work. Instead, they looked at everything with fresh eyes, finding new uses for old tools. "We're ready for the first full test," Anna announced. The test chamber had been set up with the strongest shield systems salvaged from the Starlight. They loaded one of the new hybrid penetrators into a simple railgun. Everyone held their breath as the weapon fired. The rod passed through the quantum gap, its nuclear payload detonated, and the shield collapsed completely. The bunker erupted in cheers. "Send word to all production facilities," Anna ordered. "Begin mass production immediately. And get me General Reed. He needs to see this." She turned to Captain Jane with a confident smile. "The Dominion thinks we're primitive. Let's show them how dangerous primitive can be when it's combined with the right advanced technology." The space around Mars glowed with the light of 1,000 suns as the Dominion fleet emerged from their faster-than-light jump. 300 warships, each one carrying enough firepower to level a continent, moved into attack formation. On their sensors, they detected only a handful of primitive human vessels and one damaged Alliance ship. Commander David watched from the bridge of the retrofitted aircraft carrier Enterprise, now converted into Earth's first space warfare vessel. Its deck had been modified to launch both fighter jets and spacecraft, while its hull was reinforced with Alliance shield technology. "They're forming up in their standard attack pattern," his tactical officer reported. "Just like the Alliance data said they would. Perfect rows, optimal firing positions." David smiled. "And that's their first mistake. They still think they're fighting a conventional space battle." He opened a channel to all Earth forces. "Remember your training. Fight like humans, not like them. Begin Operation Slingshot." The Dominion fleet's commander watched with amusement as the primitive Earth ships scattered in what seemed like panic. Their movements were erratic, inefficient, completely against all standard combat doctrine. His ships launched their first volley of energy weapons, expecting quick kills. But the human ships didn't explode. Instead, small quantum field generators, copied from Alliance technology, but modified by Earth engineers, created split-second gaps in their shields. The energy weapons passed harmlessly through these gaps, missing the ships entirely. "Now," David ordered, "launch first wave." From the dark side of Mars, hidden missile silos activated. But these weren't ordinary missiles. They were the hybrid weapons Dr. Anna had helped design. Simple kinetic penetrators combined with Alliance quantum technology and nuclear payloads. They accelerated to hypersonic speeds using old-fashioned chemical rockets, their trajectories wild and unpredictable. The Dominion fleet's eye-targeting systems struggled to track the missiles. They didn't follow logical attack patterns. They looped and spiraled, burned fuel inefficiently, and approached from impossible angles. Before the Dominion could adapt, the first wave struck. Tungsten rods pierced through quantum-weakened shields like needles through paper. Nuclear payloads detonated inside shield bubbles, destroying ships from the inside out. 20 Dominion warships disappeared in the first minute. "Their formation is breaking," the tactical officer shouted. "They're trying to regroup." David keyed his command channel again. "Begin Phase 2. Fighter squadrons, you are cleared to engage." Squadrons of modified Earth fighter jets streaked out of the Enterprise's launch bay. The Dominion commanders were confused. No advanced civilization used piloted fighters anymore. Their defense systems were designed to counter eye-controlled spacecraft, not human pilots with centuries of dogfighting experience. The Earth fighters dove into the chaos, their hybrid weapons wreaking havoc. They flew in ways that defied computer prediction, using maneuvers developed over centuries of aerial warfare. When Dominion ships fired their energy weapons, the fighters rolled and weaved, their small size and unpredictable movements making them nearly impossible to hit. "They're launching their own fighters," someone reported. "All AI-controlled, following standard combat protocols." "Perfect," David said. "Spring the trap." Active Operation Trojan Horse. The human fighters scattered. appearing to retreat in fear. The Dominion A fighters pursued, following the most efficient intercept courses. They didn't notice the small devices the Earth fighters had dropped in their wake. Simple electromagnetic pulse generators combined with Alliance quantum technology. The EMPs detonated, their effects magnified by quantum fields. The AI fighters, with their complex computer systems, dropped like stones. The human pilots, flying with minimal electronic assistance, swept back in to finish them off. On the Dominion command ship, panic was setting in. Nothing was going according to their battle simulations. These primitives were fighting in ways that defied all logic, all accepted tactics. Their weapons were simple but devastatingly effective. Their pilots ignored basic rules of space combat, yet somehow that made them more dangerous. "Target their command ship," David ordered. "All units, converge and fire." The Enterprise led the charge, its hybrid weapons blazing. Kinetic penetrators breached the command ship's shields. Nuclear payloads detonated. Secondary explosions chained through the massive vessel. As the Dominion command ship broke apart, their entire fleet fell into disarray. Without central control, without adaptive tactics, they were vulnerable. Ship after ship fell to Earth's primitive but effective weapons. First Speaker Marcus stood before the Galactic Council, his earlier reports about Earth displayed on the massive screens behind him. The council chamber was packed with representatives from 100 worlds, all eager to hear about the primitive species that had helped turn the tide of the greatest war in galactic history. "I was wrong," Marcus began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "We were all wrong. We measured humanity's worth by their technology alone, and in doing so, we nearly missed something extraordinary." He gestured to the battle footage playing behind him, showing Earth's hybrid weapons in action. The council members watched in silence as scenes from the war played out. They saw human pilots outmaneuvering AI-controlled ships. They watched as simple kinetic weapons, combined with Alliance technology, tore through shields that had been thought impenetrable. They observed Earth's military leaders using strategies that defied conventional galactic wisdom. "The Dominion has retreated to their home systems," Marcus continued. "Their fleet is in shambles. Their military doctrine proven flawed. And it wasn't our advanced weapons that defeated them. It was humanity's primitive thinking." Dr. Anna Roberts, now Earth's representative to the Council, stepped forward. She held up one of the simple tungsten rods that had proven so effective against Dominion shields. "This is not advanced technology," she said. "It's just a metal rod." But combined with Alliance quantum fields and human ingenuity, it changed the course of the war. The council chamber buzzed with discussion. A representative from an ancient species stood up. "But they still used fossil fuels. They fight among themselves. They haven't even colonized their own solar system." General Thomas Reed, standing beside Anna, laughed. "Yes, we still have much to learn. But perhaps you have something to learn from us as well. While you focused on building bigger weapons, we were learning to be creative with the ones we had. While you relied on AI to fight your battles, we trained our pilots to think independently." Captain Jane, her uniform now bearing both Alliance and Earth insignia, addressed the council next. "When I first contacted Earth, I broke our most sacred rules about primitive worlds. I thought I was desperate enough to ask primitives for help." She smiled at her human colleagues. "Instead, I found equals who simply looked at the universe differently than we did." The Supreme Counselor raised his hand for silence. "The facts are clear. Earth's military innovations have revolutionized warfare. Their hybrid technologies are being studied across the galaxy. And most importantly, they've shown us that advancement comes in many forms." Marcus stepped forward again. "I move to reclassify Earth immediately. They shouldn't wait centuries for full membership in the Council. They've more than proved their worth." He brought up his original assessment report and deleted it with a gesture. "Humanity's greatest strength isn't their technology. It's their ability to think differently, to adapt, to see solutions where we see only problems." The vote was unanimous. Earth was elevated to full member status. the youngest civilization ever to achieve this honor. As the council chamber erupted in applause, Anna turned to address them one final time. "We look forward to learning from you," she said. "Your science, your technology, your accumulated wisdom, we want to learn it all. But we hope you'll learn from us too. Sometimes the old ways still have value. Sometimes being primitive just means being free to think differently." After the ceremony, Marcus found Thomas standing at a window, looking out at the stars. "What will humanity do now?" Marcus asked. "With access to all our technology, all our knowledge." Thomas smiled. "Oh, we'll advance. We'll learn. We'll grow. But we'll do it our way, keeping what works from our past while embracing the future." He turned to Marcus. "You know what makes humans special? We never forget our roots. Every new thing we learn adds to what we already know. It doesn't replace it." As ships from Earth and 100 other worlds mingled in the space above the Council world, humanity had finally found its place among the stars. Not as primitives to be uplifted, not as barbarians to be civilized, but as equals who brought their own unique strengths to the galaxy. And somewhere out in the darkness between the stars, the remnants of the Dominion fleet nursed their wounds and contemplated a hard lesson: never judge a species by their technology alone. Sometimes, the most primitive solution can be the most effective.